We're going to review the essential moves for the basics of body weight strength and skill. And learning these moves will give you the foundation to be able to progress all the way up to more advanced strength and skill and do all the cool moves that you want to be able to do, but ultimately to be able to move better and feel better and just have confidence in your strength. And so we're going to go through a couple of these different positions, and they all are part of one element that we'll get into later. One sort of overarching element. But the first position is what I feel like everybody should be able to do, and it's the first basic for pushing strength, okay? The first basic. This is like basic, okay? So we're gonna be in this low squat like this, and then hands go out to wider than shoulder width. And we want to have a wide base. Sometimes people put their hands down really narrow, close together, but we want to have them wide, just like building a pyramid, a wide base. And then once we have that established, we go up on the toes, and then we should be able to gently, see how my tiptoes are touching? We should be able to gently just float the feet. And then you should be able to be comfortable right here and have a conversation and hold this for multiple minutes at a time. And be kind of unfazed by that, and have the power in your upper body, the triceps, the shoulders, to be able to do that. Oftentimes though, people have issues with wrist pain or issues with hip mobility or ankle mobility to get into just that initial position like this. So down here with the heels on the ground and the knees out and the elbows against the knees. And so sometimes wrist pain will flare up, sometimes the hips won't get into that position. And it takes time to be able to work on that connective tissue flexibility, usually about 3 to 6 months to really start seeing progressive development. And you should see that over time if you're training correctly and doing the right steps and using your body and staying mobile and stuff like that. But that's the first position there, and kind of reminds me of there's a couple of brothers that I just did a coaching call with for their Powerbatics training, and they're at level 5 of Ninja Strength, level 4 of Ninja Strength, and then they're both on level 3 of Handstand. And they started from scratch, just zero experience, and then working through just the basic progressions like that leads up to all the way up to a vertical handstand. And so they've gotten their press handstands, and they're doing muscle ups and V-stands and all the rest, all the things we'll talk about today. But it starts there with just basics like that. And you might have seen in my other videos, I've talked about the horse stance for the legs, for building leg conditioning, leg strength. And it builds the mindset as well, the endurance, because it's not so much that your body can't do it, but it's about that you have to be able to willfully hold that position. So those static holds are really, really good. And the static horse stance training for the upper body is that frog stand, just being able to hold it statically like that. And so that'll progress all the way up to a vertical handstand, and we'll get into that in other points of our training together. But the next position, so if this one presses all the way up to a handstand, like that, then the next one is going to be like this. So we just drop the arms like this, and so this sets up our second position for just our basics of bodyweight strength and skill, the fundamentals, the things that absolutely every human being should have. And don't confuse the handstand with the frog stand. So the frog stand is the basic, okay? And you can build up to a handstand, but the frog stand is the one that we're covering. That's move number 1. So move number 2, we take the hands from vertical, and then we bring them down horizontal. And that's where we start building out the planche, or a horizontal handstand. And that can take a lot of different shapes. The legs can be straddled, they can be together, they can be, the arms can be totally locked out, or they can be in a bent arm planche, but essentially it's a horizontal handstand position. And so the shape here will be something like this. So we want to have the the U shape of the hand pointing forward in the direction that we're going, and then the elbow pit aimed with that U. And then we want to get in a position where the shoulders start leaning out past the hands to an extreme degree, and then eventually we'll be on the tops of the feet like that, just leaning forward. And you notice I'm not leaning like this. I have like a turtle shell, and I'm leaning way far forward. And again, we should be able to hold that for long periods of time. Static holds are extremely powerful for just building toughness overall, and that fundamental strength that you want to be able to then carry over into your advanced strength and skill. So that would be position number 2. So we go from here, vertical hands, vertical handstand, and then down to horizontal in the planching position, okay? And then we put them down to our sides. So 1, 2, and 3. And then this position here, basic position, is this eventually leads up to the V stand that you could see in other videos. Again, this is just to cover some of the basic positions, and just for myself to review some of these, and as part of mobility and warming up and things like that for later training. But the legs straight, the feet are pointed back nice and straight like this, arms at our sides. And then what you'll notice is that as I lift my hips, it's not so much of short arm syndrome, like people will sometimes say their arms are too short to do this and they can't lift their hips off the ground. But really, it's about rounding the back with what's called core compression strength. So if you're sitting upright like this, you won't be able to lift hardly at all. But if you bring your hips out behind you like this, the back rounds and then your core compresses, same way like you would be in a reverse crunch or a V-up kind of position. But we lift up behind and try to get the face all the way to the knees. And so that would be building the core strength to be able to start getting your body off of the ground. And that's one thing I think about whenever I think about mainstream fitness and stuff, is a lot of people, they do all of these different disjointed exercises, but they're not really training their whole body. And that can become really problematic for a number of different things. From coordination, just wanting to move better or learn new advanced skills, and the body just isn't used to moving as a singular entity, okay? But training like this and being able to lift your body off of the ground just using your hands is important. So you can lift all the weights that you want to, but if you can't lift your body off the ground, then what's the point, you know? And there's a point to lifting the weights and stuff, but not being able to move your body in space how you want to, that's the ultimate right there. That's the ultimate. So once again, just lifting the hips behind, pulling the face to the knees. Issues there is going to be hamstring flexibility. Obviously, core compression strength. So when we look at core strength from just regular training, like reverse crunches, sit-ups, wipers, Russian twists, all that kind of stuff, it's not really like forcing the body to hover and float above the ground. So it's a completely different thing, and it's steps above in terms of core strength. The little modifications can be like this, going up on the knuckles to give some space, or the fists to give some space. But easy stuff, super basics that everyone should be able to do. And a student that did really well with this, he had a broken back from a car wreck. His name is Matt, and he came a long way from the beginnings. Again, zero experience, but he built up to the point where he has wonderful V stands, legs floating. This is a V stand. Legs floating way up in the air, handstands, working on planches, Stalders. We'll get into that in a second too. but much more sustainable kind of strength that, and get this, this is cool, this carries over into weightlifting and into other fitness modalities, whereas the opposite is not true. It doesn't necessarily come over as easily, okay? And so if you're building your body from the inside out like this, it's really advantageous because it carries over to a lot of things. So that's number 3. So we go 1, 2, 3, and then the hands go in the middle. All right, so this is our Stalder. And so again, being able to lift the body off of the ground. And by the way, all these positions that I'm sharing with you today, like I said at the beginning of the video, they prepare you for more advanced strength and skill. And so just one example of that is going from each of these positions and pressing up to a handstand. And so I showed you the frog stand going up to the handstand in the beginning, and then a planche can go to a handstand. A V stand, the legs can come through and go to a handstand. And then the Stalder here, okay? So just doing this might already be a challenge. Just sitting with legs wider than 90 degrees and then hands flat down like this could already be a challenge. And then keeping the hands flat and then lifting the legs, that can be a challenge. And we have these drills where we'll do like 100 pulses like this, or like circles like this, okay? And in a lot of cases, a lot of people, their iliacus and psoas, lower core muscles, and upper leg muscles are kind of their weak link. And then that causes all kinds of problems in their hips and everything else. But building this kind of strength, I mean, it transfers over to martial art kicks, to power moves like flares and windmills, to all these different things. And of course, just having good, healthy legs and core strength, okay? But another way of working this position, legs out, hands down, is we lift the hips off the ground and then we float the legs, okay? And that's our Stalder. And again, all of these can press up into a handstand. All right, so that's number 4, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5, we just bend, all right? We just bend the elbow. You notice I twist the wrist too. And so this is gonna set us up for a different position here. Basic position. Again, all of these are basics, okay? All these are basics. And by the way, they all connect together to create something called a kata, which if you see my other videos, you'll see all of these different moves connected together into a sequence. And we do those with power, and it helps build overall athleticism. It helps build memory and cognition because you're memorizing these patterns and then executing them over and over and over again. There's just so many benefits from that. But the next position here is on the knees, fingers pointing outwards away from the center line, and then hand comes down underneath and the elbow goes right into our stomach. And then we reach out, okay? And then we bring that same ear of the hand that's balancing down to the ground. And as we listen to the floor, the knees might start to float and they just rise up, okay? But same thing, this position might already be a challenging starting point for a lot of people, and that's fine, just as long as you don't stay there. Keep training, keep going through progressions, and building up step by step. But this position here, on the knees, fingers out wide, elbow bent, out, arm out supporting, that's already gonna place a lot of pressure on the wrist. Then we bring the head down and the knees up like this, okay? And then we can extend, and we can do one arm, and we can press the handstand and all these other things. But that's the basic position there, okay? So that's 5. All right, so to review, 1, and then 2, the planching, and then 3, down to the sides, and then 4, Stalder, and then 5 for the crab. And then the last one that we'll look at, this progresses all the way up to really cool stuff, okay? And again, a neglected a neglected area of flexibility and strength in the vast majority of the population, just like most of these moves are. But they're simple, they're easy to start, and then just building and building and building from there. But this move, it progresses all the way to arched handstands and back handsprings, and it has to do with your posterior chain. And so you guys know what I'm gonna show you. This is the bridge, okay? And oftentimes people have a really difficult time getting into the bridge. But again, it's a basic, you should be able to do this. And at least just the hip lift, okay? At least that. And then I'm like taking my hands and putting them back, and I'm pointing my fingers all the way to my feet. And then from here, this again could be difficult. So quad stretch, lower back and posterior chain is working here to hold this position. And then the arms and wrists are getting stretched. And we're mobilizing all of these joints in ways that aren't typically mobilized. And then from there, we push up and we can hold. We can do static holds there, just like the horse stance. We could do jumps off the ground. We can build all the way to what's called a hollow back handstand, which is an arching handstand, back handsprings, and the whole 9 yards. So all of that. And those are a few basics that, again, everybody should be able to do. So to review, we have our vertical, then we have our planche, then we have our hands to the side for the V-stand, then we have them in the middle for the Stalder, and then crab, and then pulling them back around for the bridge. And all of these assemble together into katas, and they build up into higher level strength and skill. And so those are the few things that we should be doing to develop and not neglecting those areas, because if they are neglected, if they're not built, then they will ultimately lead to things like weak links, which could be, as an example, let's say that somebody isn't doing their bridge. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to have decreased shoulder mobility and upper thoracic mobility, which then, if they go to do something that requires arching, all that pressure is going to go to the lower back, which then is going to cause back pain. Similarly, if someone is neglecting Stalder stands and the ability to use the hips in the degrees and ranges of motion that they're designed to be used, but they're not, then that's going to eventually transfer into things like problems with the hips, obviously, but then it's going to go down the line. So it's going to manifest in ways like knee pain and ankle, and so things that you'll have to then open back up and rebuild, which you can rebuild, and that's the positive thing. So that's it for today. See you in the next one.